So, welcome to the 2024 series of clay seminars and workshops convened by the Ceramic Research Centre UK at University of Westminster, UK, New York University, USA, Indian Ceramics Triennale, and Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology at Kumasi in Ghana. My name is Madhuri Subramanian, and I'm an artist and a co-curator of the Indian Ceramic Triennale. I live between Singapore and Mumbai. I'm the host for today's workshop, and the theme for today is clay in contemporary context. The participating artists are Neha Kurcharkar from India and Phoebe Cummings from the UK. Each of the artists will start by introducing themselves through a PowerPoint presentation for 5 minutes, and then I'll ask them to respond to questions on the workshop theme. So please go ahead and share your screen. Neha, would you like to start? And then we will move to Phoebe after you, and then I'll come back with the questions. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Uh, hello, I am Neha Kurcharkar. I am an artist and performer based in Mumbai, and I am really happy to be here and be part of the workshop and to be talking to Phoebe and be making at the same time. I'm also very nervous because I haven't done this before, but I'm excited, very, very excited. I'm also excited to share bits of the practice and you see my screen? It's gone blank.
Yeah, it's gone. Oh, yeah, it's back now. Oh,
Okay, it's not showing this slide. I think there's something wrong with my keynote. But I have been making ceramics and trying to see what is possible to make in ceramics and push the boundaries of what can be called ceramics through my work, as well as document personal journeys. This particular body of work is part of a recurring project called autoethnography through objects, which first started when I was doing my MA at the Royal College of Art in London. But basically, the body of work documents and marks my body in the socio political space through objects at different points in my life. And a lot of what has happened in the last few years has been quite difficult and precarious, like the feeling of being precarious and vulnerable and uncomfortable. And that's what I have been trying to do through my work, to capture through my work, record, I think, more than anything else through my work, the sort of the rage, the shame, even self-sabotage that has been piling on over the years. And that I find finds release through the making process. I'm really sorry I wasn't able to show the first, I don't know why this is not being seen, but and uh, and this is a body of uh, work that was made most recently last year at the Princess Hawk Museum. And what I had the opportunity to do was to work with objects from the museum and put in a vitrine with those objects some work that was made by me and some ceramic figurines that were inherited by me. The work was called Making Histories, and I chose from the collection of the museum, from the depot, work that had not been seen had not seen the light of day, and I wanted to bring those objects out, because you have all of these museums in the West that have collections of work, and then what is the point? What is the point at which it stops being at which the museum stops being collection and becomes a collector and becomes a hoarder? And so I brought out work that was part of the collection that hadn't seen the light of day. Most of these were objects that were from across the world and not from Europe. But then I brought into it also a personal story from my grandfather, who was a physicist and who, to make money, was selling these porcelain figurines. The point was to also make an intervention to change the value of the figurine and make an intervention, bring them into a museum vitrine and see how that actually changed the work. It's also of importance to me how what kind of impressions all of these objects will leave on each other in the duration of the year that they will be in the museum, and how all of these objects could have changed each other. I am going to stop sharing. But when I talk about my work, quite often I have said that I am interested in exploring conceptual possibilities of clay, in playing with ideas of temporality and materiality. Can clay be dematerialized without displacing its materiality? How can I use the different stages of the life cycle of the clay to say what I need? I see myself as maker. Making is research, experience is play, is knowing, is choreography, is a performance. I am beginning to wonder about that last bit, though. I wonder if making, for me, is a performance anymore, because more and more in my work, I think I want to unperform. And as a performance artist, I don't know what that journey of unperforming through my work is going to be like. That, which is also brings me, I mean, the reason for reading that out is also sort of bringing me to today and doing this on screen. I have to think about I have to think about whether this is a performance, maybe.
Mm.
And we have to ask that question on to you. Is this a performance?
Yeah, and I want to get into a conversation already, but yeah, I guess I should share my slides first, and then yeah, there's too many things that I want to talk about. Yeah. So yeah, I'll just briefly share my screen. Yeah, so just to introduce, I'm Phoebe Cummings. I'm an artist. I live in Staffordshire in the UK, and I also work as a research associate at the Ceramics Research Centre at the University of Westminster. And I've got a couple of images of previous work that I guess for the last 20 years, I've worked almost exclusively with raw clay, and kind of, yeah, I suppose generally the work is always time-based. It often can exist from anywhere from a day to maybe 6 months, typically in an exhibition. There are a few pieces that are kind of allowed to, I guess, exist indefinitely, things that I've made a bit like behind me that are, yeah, I guess in an environment where they can remain untouched. But on the whole, the kind of situations that I'm building the work in are quite brief. And then where possible, I'll recycle the clay. So I think there's this kind of ongoing process really in the work that I guess an interest in not fixing the material in one form permanently, and that kind of potential for clay to kind of endlessly be kind of dissolved and remade is something that still really interests me. I think with different pieces, there's often different themes that kind of recur and often connected to the place where they're made. So that might be connected to particular museum collections or the kind of environment or location that they're shown in, which is sometimes galleries, sometimes other kind of spaces. So this piece here was a structure in a garden. So it was kind of open
to the outside, but sheltered. And often there's kind of botanical elements to the work, which kind of move between being maybe very specific and connected to the history of plants, or also often is maybe partly imagined, and this kind of space between nature and design is something that comes back a lot in the work. Yeah, they're kind of in a funny order, but yeah, certain pieces of work, I guess, are much more about how they change for the duration of the exhibition. So sometimes working with water, where this was a larger fountain piece, so the piece kind of erodes over time. And I guess a bit like Neha, I have an interest in performance, but particularly, I guess, thinking less about, I don't really see myself as the performer, but more about how the material itself and the object can kind of enact its own performance. And also, I guess, increasingly over recent years, because the nature of the work has been that it's all temporary, and thinking much more about how I record the work and kind of what material, yeah, kind of combinations of different layers of recording, and kind of how I can translate maybe the experience of sculpture in the future without necessarily the object being present. So kind of thinking about written records, photographs, film, even humidity and the kind of atmosphere that might have existed around the kind of material work as well. So I'd say almost at this point, I kind of am equally interested really in both that process of making the work, but also the kind of how it exists both in its material form and after its material form. So yeah, I'll maybe stop sharing and we can begin talking. Yeah.
That was lovely. Thank you, Phoebe, and thank you, Neha. So I'm actually going to change the questions based on what I thought I was going to do earlier, based on what you guys have. I'm going to pick up on the thread that Neha talked about performance and unperforming, and Phoebe talked about the material as a performer. So I'm quite curious for you guys to take that conversation a little further in terms of, as a performer, you tell stories or you're going to say something with your performance. Does clay facilitate that performance for you as a material? And does clay allow you to have that performance for yourself, be a quiet performer in your own space? And maybe in some cases for an audience, or is and the same way the material, is that being a performer in your case, Phoebe? Is it something that you use as a performing object? So it would be quite interesting to elaborate on something you both have started the conversation with. So, clay as a communicator through the idea of through you performing and using you as a tool, more than you using clay as a tool as well. So both ways. So I'd like to hear more on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, where to begin? Yeah. And it's interesting, it sounds as well like maybe your own kind of thinking and relationship to performance is also shifting, maybe at the moment or over, maybe it's constantly shifting, but yeah.
Yes, right now more than ever, I think it is. And I mean, because I've been actually thinking about whether I want to be a performer and what it means to be a performer, or more than anything else, whether I want to perform or whether I want to be. And I really like to be. And so maybe I should be. And even like, I mean, that's quite a bit what I thought about today. Because yes, the work takes on this sort of performative space. Also, because I use my body quite a lot in the making of the work and in the quite often in the sort of final form of the work. But actually, if when I talk about making as a performance, it's actually really boring to watch me work. I'm really fairly sure that. I mean, I think it's so much an inward experience. And it's also like really space and time, but it's that space is really, it's solo space. And it's important for me that it is a solo space. It's very rarely have I had any sort of physical input from anybody else, or like the presence or having witnesses. I mean, that's the other thing, like with a performance, you have an audience, or you have somebody that witnesses performance. And I don't know about that in my studio, which is becoming increasingly a sort of solo space.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is it something I'm thinking about, and it's something that I have been wondering about.
Yeah.
As well.
And I guess for me, it's interesting. I guess that sometimes I am making in a public space, and so to an extent there is an audience, but I guess I never really intend that process as a performance as such. It's more that it's kind of maybe exposing the process of how I work, but it's very much determined by the situation. It's determined by the situation rather than it being a requirement of the work that this is a moment of performance and you're the audience. I think it's more a kind of, there might be people there, there might not be people there. But I guess certainly I'm thinking of, I guess maybe it's from the moment where I step back from the work that's when I guess I consider the performance beginning. Or I think it was interesting, I did a project this summer that was, it was actually part of a classical music festival. And I was there for a week and kind of making work outside, and the idea being, I guess, kind of thinking of that as a sort of performance, the weather, kind of between the material and the weather. And that was kind of existing at the same time as sort of multiple musical performances, and kind of connect with that. I'm getting a lot of echo, I don't know why. That similarity really, I guess, in terms of kind of investing in these moments that are experienced through time, and then beyond that, those things kind of have no lasting physical presence. But then also I found that there was, often I was maybe working unseen. So sometimes people might be there because I was outside, but also I might be alone. So in that case, when I was the kind of this performance that I'd thought of with the weather was kind of happening so quickly that actually it became that, it was kind of going on at the same time as I was, as fast as I was working, the work was kind of eroding. And also there wasn't an audience there, and kind of, I guess that shifted some of those boundaries a bit that I'm still trying to figure out. And then does it, if there is no audience, does it become more about the recorded performance, or it kind of raises other questions, I think. And I mean, I wonder with you, Neha, if this role of the live performance, and how are those performances always recorded, or are you very much focused on it's just an experience that's there and then? And
it's quite often a recorded performance, or a photograph. Which might be the record of that moment. And it's really me. And again, I think in that there is that sort of, you move between being a performer like, I mean, whether or not you're the performer, you're definitely the director
Mm.
of whatever the piece is or the experience is. And so even like with the films as well, it's really me having. So I mean, at what point, like, where is the work? Like, where is the making of the work? Because the piece, for example, the videos that I showed, there was a lot of making that happened before the performance bit. And actually being, and again, which is why I wonder about the word performance, is because when I'm there either lying flat with all of those pieces, some of which are fired, some of which are not fired, laying on my body, and they're all balanced precariously on me. And I have, I mean, I'm like, and it is about that sort of feeling of guilt, and about, about this, like, this, this all-consuming weight, which is very real. It's not something that I have imagined. In that sense, it is very real, and I've then made something that becomes a visual and a physical experience of you know of an emotion that I have been feeling very strongly, in the case of that work, which is called Weightlifter. And at that moment, in front of the camera, what I have to be doing is to breathe. I mean, that's my only job as the performer, is to breathe. But it is precarious. Somewhere I do not want to lose all of those things. I mean, it is precarious, all of those things that are sort of balanced on top of me as I am breathing in real time. But I mean, the making of those pieces of the clay work has happened. Similarly for Loser, which was the film in which I'm sort of like breaking things against my head. The making has happened, and then on the frame is the breaking. And I don't know, like, the first time I did it, I did not know. Like, I knew it was an image that I wasn't able to, that was haunting me for years. And I knew that I had to do something with it. And I knew that it's helpful to do something with it. And so, and making the work and actually, using the work and breaking the work was, I mean, it is me being, because I don't know what it's going to be like. I do not know the script.
And I guess with any with any live moment, whether it's performance or not, but there is that unpredictability, and you maybe prepare, or whether you consider it rehearsing or not, but I guess the work goes towards this moment, and then, but there is this unknown, you can't control it entirely. I think that probably interests both of us.
Which is true also of, like, a fully choreographed, like, down to the T performance. That there is something that when you're standing there on stage, something else takes over. And you are, like, quite often, and to go back to sort of Madhavi's question, you are danced, and when you are danced, it is a completely different experience from when you are dancing. I mean, and I think I think for me, this thing of unperforming is that, where I do not want to be the performer, I want to be performed. Maybe that is what it is.
It's
sorry, should I
go on.
with a follow-up question? So I think both of you are, I mean, it's really fascinating. But I'm just wondering, if for performance, do you need an audience? Isn't it a performance in a sense when you don't even notice you are performing? Like when you're working Phoebe, you are in a sense your own performer. Do you actually need an audience in there to call it a performance? If we're talking about clay, is clay performing through you? It is shaping itself through you, and is the clay the performer, perhaps?
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely think a lot about all of the things that clay does on its own, you know, that in a way that it react, you know, it in the sense that how it is as a raw material, that's kind of built into it, that it kind of, there's this evaporation and change of states and transformation that I think already takes us to some kind of space of performance or things being enacted over time, I guess. And yeah, it's interesting, that question of audience, or you know, in some ways I think, and both of us, the body comes through a lot in what we're making, you know, that these, in some ways the sculpture is this kind of record of this time period between raw material and my body, you know, that does that, it maybe is only visible up close, but this kind of trace of the hands or the body and the prints left behind, that all of it really is a recording of just this kind of live confrontation of body and material. And yeah, to what extent I require that to be seen, I don't know. I need to think more about that, and you've probably got other thoughts. Yeah.
So when I was thinking about what I should be making today, and really long time, I couldn't think of a single thing that could be achieved in the hour. Because that's also what I was thinking. I was thinking very much performance. And then I thought, I mean, you know, like a lot of what you said right now, and it's something that I have in some ways worked on before, like thinking about, you know, like whatever it is that we are making right now, and it literally does not matter what we are making right now, being in fact a sort of tangible or physical recording of this conversation. So instead of it being the other way around, where the work is complete or documented via, you know, like either an audio or more likely a visual sort of like recording, where it's the other way around, where in fact this conversation and this moment is recorded through our hands in whatever it is that is made in the moment. Because I mean, it happens, no, whenever you're talking, or if you're working in a sort of community studio, and you do always then have an audience or witnesses. You know, when you're talking to each other, there are very few people that are not fiddling with the clay. Like,
yeah, I'm doing I'm not sure.
You know, we don't know what we are.
Even if it's not even making you still. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there is something that captures that moment in time, and is a different sort of recording. It may not be a literal recording or a literal documentation or what you expect documenting a moment. But I mean, I'm just sort of thinking about flipping the idea of recording and what recording a moment could actually be.
And I think, you know, in a way, making always is this kind of accumulation of time in a physical form, you know, in some way or another. And I wonder if it's maybe interesting to, I guess I'm curious certainly about where you are and the similarity that looks to be between the clay bodies that we're working with, and just where we are, and maybe that's interesting also to think about. Yeah.
Where I am right now actually is my studio in Bombay, which is just like literally everything you can see right now. That's where it starts and that's where it ends.
Yeah.
It's a really, really tiny space. But I mean, it's under a doctor's office as well.
Mm.
So it's this sort of, and it used to be my mum's office at one point. So
Mhm.
there is, of course, there is a lot of sort of connection.
Mm.
This space and with making in this space, I feel like it has carried me quite a bit. Um, yes, but I do see the similarity in the
Yeah.
clay as
I
as
mean, I
well.
guess, yeah, I have a like a buff stoneware clay body that, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
have.
similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I have a stoneware as well, which has its. I mean, again, then you know, I'm in Bombay right now, and this comes from that the gray color of this stoneware comes from a particular fire clay that is found in Thangar.
Mhm.
Uh, yeah, so there are these sort of geographical, I think,
Mm, mm.
connections with the earth, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess similarly, this clay, although it's like bought packaged clay, but the is made fairly locally to me in Staffordshire. And although there are other areas in terms of the ground near here where there's a lot of clay, tends to be more like red terracotta kind of colored deposits as well. And then, yeah, I guess in terms of where I am, I'm at my dining table. I do have a workspace at home in my garage, but it's yeah, it's kind of usable from late spring to early autumn, and yeah, it kind of moves. And I guess for me, certainly a lot of the making happens in the gallery or the exhibition situation. I guess for you, maybe that shifts more between like preparation or things happening on site.
It definitely shifts. Yeah, it depends upon, I mean, where I am in life as well. Because my studio, I mean, I have this really super tiny space in Bombay, and then I sometimes, when this is too small, my house becomes an extended
Mm.
studio. My
Yeah,
flat
yeah.
becomes an extended studio, but I do have a studio, you know, about 3 hours from Bombay, surprisingly. And unfortunately, too little work gets made there. I mean, I
Mm.
don't
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
what, what my problem is, but I have.
Time probably. Yeah.
So I can come in at this point again. And so it seems to me like, like a lot of people, especially for you and Neha, the work kind of evolves and happens under your fingers, sometimes planned, sometimes unplanned. Do you want to talk a little bit about your conceptual thinking with when does it happen? Does it happen, Phoebe, in your case, a response to the space that you're going to be part of? Is it, and in Neha's case, is it happening in your dreams? When is this happening and how is it getting manifested and translated into your work?
What's to begin there? I mean, certainly for me, I think more typically, I'm kind of led by the site or the kind of context where I know the work will end up. I think I find it really difficult there's always things that I'm ongoing thinking about or have an interest in, but actually without a kind of particular time and place, I'm not sure I would ever get around to making anything. Maybe I kind of need that push, but I'm curious if that's the same for you, or like, you talked about with the kind of the hammer piece that almost it feels like you had this vision of it and you needed to make it regardless of how it then went out into the world. But
It was quite scary to put it out into the world, actually,
mm,
because again, I mean, it was about being extremely transparent about something that is quite difficult. But uh, but I mean, if that's what you have to do, then that's what you have to do.
mm,
Um, and yeah, I mean, there is work like that starts with an image in my head, and
yeah,
uh, that needs to that needs to be made. Uh, and with that work, I think, I mean, a lot of the work is very very personal. A lot of the work is also quite political. I mean, there was the image that I was trying to show. The first image that I think there's something wrong with my laptop, but the first image that couldn't be seen was of were photographs that I had taken in Sweden. And it was from a defunct kaolin mine. And it was I mean, and this kaolin mine, it was like really, really, it was like all of the colors of, the universe on that supposedly white clay. I mean, it was just like the most brilliant blues and rusts. And I mean, it was gorgeous, the colors. And because it was a defunct mine, you weren't, I mean, there no active mining was happening over there. But it was a small group of potters and ceramicists who were taken to the mine. And so people were allowed to take a little bit of clay. And so that my work was just sort of just like these little sort of clawing patterns of people having taken from the earth. And I was in that work, for example, when I saw that, I mean, you think about, and especially like even in sort of Indian mythology, you think of like, you have all of these creation myths and, the potter as a creator and, like God as a potter and all of these things. And then you're looking, and then you see these images actually directly in the clay, where you have like, potters as destroyers. And that's sort of like, like for me, that was an interesting thing, but I actually forgot why I started talking about this. But a lot of the times it is like, making the work, conceptualizing the work happens through something that I have seen, a deep emotion that I have, something that is, very, very political. That is why I started talking about this, that the work, that it is political. And I think of the political as personal as well. And it is something that I have been thinking about a lot, that, that I sort of also need to read and research what I'm thinking about quite a bit. And it's only then that I actually get my hands in clay, and I still don't know what I am going to make. And when I get my hands in clay, then that is made, whatever it is that needs to be made in the moment, I mean, then it's just a lot of sort of play and thinking through the clay in that moment, but that comes after a whole bunch of like, reading about it and, sitting on it and thinking about things. I mean, which is probably why I have to make, I feel like the weight of the world is on me to make work like weightlifter. But I mean, but then when it is actually, when over here, it is really about thinking through the hands and, but I mean, it's very rarely, having a conversation while doing that. It's really all happening. There's like a lot of talking, but it's all happening with myself and with the clay.
And I think there's something that I don't know, I guess that I think about in terms of how I think clay in its raw state, particularly, I feel like can make this deeply personal connection between both the maker and the audience. I think that there's something that this encounter then with the raw material, like there's nothing, it's completely exposed both to that point of making, but also the audience is exposed to that. There's no kind of coating it or it's a kind of very direct interaction, I feel, with the audience. And I guess I feel like I always go in with a loose plan, but there's also a lot of improvisation. And I think also there is often a time limit that is, there's these kind of certain practical situations that come into it, like, okay, I've got a week to make, I've got a ton of clay, or however much, there's this kind of also quite basic parameters that I have to work in, and it's always this battle to kind of get to somewhere where you kind of envisage you want to be, but also accepting that it's not a certainty, and kind of having to deal with, you get as close as you can and hope that it kind of, I don't know, I guess almost can make this point of connection with people through what you do.
And what this makes me think of, actually, one of the questions that we were supposed to be asked. Actually. I mean, what is it that is underrepresented? And I mean, I was thinking, when I was thinking about these questions, that maybe what is underrepresented is exactly this sort of like super pragmatic side, but not just that. Also the fact that you're constantly sort of I mean, we talk about people who work with clay being so good at failing because you fail a lot, but we rarely talk about those failures, and we rarely share those failures. So I mean, sort of thinking about sort of failing in my quest to unperform as well, failing as sharing in the failing, and being vulnerable in that moment, and being like really sort of I don't know, like really transparent in the fact that in fact it is that the clay has agency, and you're whether or not, whether you are a conceptual artist, or whether you are a potter, or whoever, whatever your relationship is with the clay, you cannot deny the fact that clay has agency, and in that sense it is a constant sort of conversation. And in that conversation, you lose debates, and you lose a lot.
And I think, I was thinking a little bit about this question of, maybe what's missing, or I was also thinking a lot about what kind of spaces things can happen in, or, I guess we both work in a more, maybe a less traditional ceramic way, in terms of we're not focused necessarily on this kind of permanent object. And I think that can easily maybe find a home in more public spaces, or, with a different agenda, in a way that it's often more problematic in a commercial space, that, in terms of what people are willing to collect, they still want those kind of traditionally stable objects on the whole. But also in the museum, it's complicated, I think, in terms of, I think it naturally, can lend itself to engaging with audiences, and is kind of valued in that way, but often then still isn't collected. So it kind of, although all these different forms of practice happen, I feel like there's still, they're kind of kept in pockets, or like the ways they exist don't fully integrate into where they are, or I don't know. I have questions around that, maybe
maybe it's also about them creating those kind of spaces. Madhvi, you want to say something?
I was just going to say that we're kind of coming up to the hour.
Yes.
And it's been quite wonderful that the hour has gone through so fast, but I'd like to end with one more quick question, because Neha talked about thinking through her hands. The concept kind of comes through her intellectual side, research, and then come through the hand. And you talked about making connections with people through the work that you do. And so I'd like to end with, what are you doing right now? And what are you trying to, what have you made in this 1 hour while we were talking? And how is that, and what are you trying to communicate in one sentence? If you can, what are you trying to communicate with your audience who's watching you right now? So.
Maybe
Maybe
you
I'm going to ask you to go first.
Okay. So I guess while we've been talking, I've been making a flower. Partly I kind of just decided I would do something that almost I can make without thinking, because I knew I'd be talking, and I kind of, because it's something I make frequently, I could probably do with my eyes closed. It's that. And I guess a bit like we were saying about pressing the material, it's that kind of action of like doing, but slightly mindlessly actually. But I guess nevertheless, for me, there's kind of this impression of my physical presence in this 1 hour, and kind of literally this kind of physical trace of me here and this time together.
So for me, I am not entirely sure why, but I started, but I may be sure. I may know why. But I just started coiling, and I don't know where it's going to go yet. I had a bunch of sort of like molds from the body kept on the side in case I wanted to use them. And I did this for the same reason, that it's something that I could do while I was talking to you, because like I said, that a lot of the making actually happens. It's such an inward process that it's really difficult to keep talking when that is happening. But at the same time, I have been thinking about something that in the last few years I have really missed doing, which is just like really having fun with the baking and not having to think about what it is that I am making, and just sort of making for making and making as play. And which is what then I thought that, okay, I mean, I had a bunch of projects that I thought that, maybe I could be doing this when I'm talking to Phoebe, but I decided that no, what I'm going to make is just, it's nothing yet. I'm coiling though. It might become something. I mean, what it is, I'm sure, is a record of this conversation, and it might become something that that I take back from the conversation as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Phoebe and Neha. That was really very interesting. I love the idea that the clay has been forming itself while you guys were talking. It has its own agency. It probably has its ears and sensory feeling as well. And so it's alive, and we all are have, can be can really be sure of that one. So thank you so much. And with this, we will end the call, I guess. Tessa, do you need to come in at all for concluding it?
I'm just going to pop up to say thank you all for such a brilliant conversation today, and for all of your time, and fantastic. Thank you.